How are you guys doing? This is Eri Senpai, or Eric as some of you may know me. And this is one of the videos I've been wanting to make for a while now. And it's about a movie I feel very strongly about and absolutely love. So let's get right into the video. Part three. Oh my god. Oh my god, the body. A third, baby. Easy dubs. What a game, what a game. Alright, so if y'all have seen my last video, I stated that I wanted to make a video reviewing Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. A movie that, in my last video as well, I said I absolutely loved. It was a great movie, a great ending to 2022 since it came out late in the year, and it was my favorite movie of that year. As y'all may know, 2022 has been a year of ups and downs for animated movies. We had movies like Minions Rise of Gru, which were a standout, Sonic 2, which I found pretty great. It was a great movie all around. And other movies. One of the ones I really forgot about was the Jujutsu Kaisen movie. It was absolutely great. But yeah, just a weird year for animated movies. Lightyear received mixed reviews. Same thing with films like Turning Red. I feel like I'm missing a really huge one that I'll mention if I remember later in this video or something. Because I really feel like I'm missing a huge one. But whatever. Let's continue with the video. So, when we talk about animated movies, there's plenty of animated movies that come to mind, plenty of studios that come to mind, some of the main ones being Pixar and DreamWorks. Other ones include like Illumination, Blue Sky, those. But my favorite studio for animation, like of movies I guess are considered for kids, it has to be DreamWorks. Now, I grew up with DreamWorks. I was born in 2003, so I've watched DreamWorks movies my whole life. Some of my favorite movies and movie franchises have been from DreamWorks. Some of their standouts include Madagascar, Shrek, How to Train Your Dragon, Kung Fu Panda, an absolute masterpiece that I love. My favorite one of those, I don't know, I got attached to Marty when I was younger, and I also played the Madagascar game, which was a huge part of my childhood, playing on PS2. And I don't know, Madagascar for me was just a film that I really loved as a kid. I loved all the characters, Gloria, Alex, Marty, but this isn't what this video is about. I just want to talk about DreamWorks as a studio. And I might have found my new favorite DreamWorks movie with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. An absolute masterpiece. As many of us may know, Puss in Boots' first appearance was in Shrek 2. He appeared in that one scene where Shrek and Donkey are in the forest, and someone's trying to like hunt Shrek, and they hire Puss, and then Puss like gets naked and starts attacking Shrek. It was a really funny scene. Great stuff. I loved Puss in Boots in this scene, and Puss in Boots is just he's just an iconic character in DreamWorks, in Shrek, and everything. And in 2011, Puss in Boots got a spin-off, Puss in Boots movie, and it was a movie that I would say it didn't get as high reviews as some may expect from a character who's involved in Shrek. It was a good movie. It wasn't anything exceptionally crazy at the level of Shrek 1 or 2 or anything like that. It was just a good movie. And a few years later, coming to now, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish dropped. An absolute masterpiece. If you haven't watched it, go watch it right now. And hopefully I don't give you any spoilers in this video. Up until this point, I really haven't. But I'm going to start talking about the movie in depth. And, you know, if you're planning on watching it and now you're watching this video, or you're watching this video beforehand, might be a bad idea, but I don't know. I still have a lot of stuff to talk about in this video. So, Puss in Boots as a character, he's an orange cat. Bro fights with the sword. He wears boots. Bro drinks a lot of milk, not alcohol. He has his Spanish accent. He's played by Antonio Banderas in English, of course. And he's just a character with a lot of energy. He's very entertaining in all the Shrek movies, and of course in his own spin-offs. And in this movie, his role begins as he's just like fighting some like evil boss or whatever from this village, and he's in the fight. He ends up dying, and it's at this point that we find out that Puss in Boots is on his last life. And because of it being his last life, he's gonna live it like he normally does. You know, he doesn't really care about it that much until the wolf comes in, or death, which I'm gonna talk about these characters more in depth in a bit. But right now, I'm just giving a brief thing about the story is about. And Death chases him around, and Puss is like frightened by him. He's absolutely scared. In their first entanglement, Puss, he started getting like his hair started standing up. I didn't want to say goosebumps because you couldn't necessarily see that, but yeah, he gets cut by Death in his head. And he like fears him for like almost the whole movie, so he kind of goes into hiding for a bit, and like he's like real depressed. There's a lot of other characters that get involved that play a part in the story as we go on. That's mainly how it goes, and then he finds out about this wish that can be granted if he like follows this path or whatever, or he finds a star, and so in the story, Puss finds out about the star that grants him one wish, and he wants to wish for his lives back because Death is going to take it from him. And more characters find out about the star. They try to get involved, and that's the main premise of the story. Puss is trying to get his lives back and not get attacked by Death, I guess, or not lose his last life to Death. And he goes through like a character development arc, and he stops being the selfish warrior he once was for his friends. I would say family too, I guess, because they kind of became that at the end. But yeah, he tries to become a better being for his friends who all love him. So, in this movie, there's actually a lot of side characters, and Puss in Boots, of course. And so, in this movie, there's a lot of side characters. Surprisingly, that doesn't actually ruin the plot, which I thought it would, because there's a lot of people involved. Like, some might not get as much screen time, and they might not have as much relevance to the plot. And this surprised me. With all the characters involved, there was still a lot of they still all got a lot of screen time. They all contributed, I think, equally to the plot, as much as each one did. And I thought they all meshed well together in this movie. So in this video, I'm really only I'm only really gonna speak about like the main characters who are involved in this plot. There's a lot of sub characters that I feel didn't contribute as much, and for this reason aren't important to this video. So I'm gonna put pictures of them on screen, of course, and the first one we have is Big Jack Horner. So Big Jack Horner, for many, was actually the antagonist of this movie for many, because many people would also say Death, but we'll get on to why I don't really consider that the villain of this movie. But Big Jack Horner is from a fairy tale that's not really well known, and he mentions that in the movie. He has like a pie factory, and he collects a lot of artifacts from many fairy tales. Like some of the ones he uses in the movie is like these unicorn horns. He also has, and another artifact he has in his bag is like this cookie that makes him a giant, and at the end it's like this huge like fight. And like I said, I'd actually consider him the main villain of this movie, because in the whole movie he only had evil intentions. He was attacking everyone, even his own crew, the own people that were his workers and stuff from his factory. He even attacked them the whole movie just to get the last wish, as you may call it. And yeah, he never really had a change in his heart like any of the other characters experienced. Puss in Boots, Death, Goldilocks. He didn't have that, and he was just kind of evil throughout the whole movie. And at the end, he was the main antagonist that they had to slay so he wouldn't get the last wish, of course. And he was just greedy the whole movie, and his greed is really what led to his demise. He had everything he wanted. He had a crew. He even had a little cricket that was advising him, his conscience. He even had that, and he never changed his ways. He remained evil throughout the whole movie. Even this cricket that was his conscience ended up betraying him because he was just too evil. So, for me, he is the overarching villain of this whole movie. Now, his contribution to the plot, I wouldn't say it was heartfelt like Puss in Boots, like Goldilocks, or even Death. He was just a ruthless villain, and I think it was perfect. I think it was perfect in this movie. I thought he did his part very well, and it didn't intrude on any of the other characters in the story. And overall, a great character. Now, the next characters I'm going to talk about are Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I'm putting them all together because I feel like they all belong together. I don't think we can single each one out. So you had the Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and then the Kid Bear. I honestly forgot what his name is. And then Goldilocks, of course. And we all know the fairy tale about Goldilocks eating the porridge and then like living with the Three Bears. And they were introduced in that depressing Puss arc where dude's living with a bunch of cats. He doesn't even wear his like boots. He doesn't have a sword. He doesn't have anything. He's depressed. It was that phase right after his first encounter with Death. And that was the first time they were introduced. They were looking for Puss in Boots, and they were the ones that actually led him to find out about this last wish that Puss in Boots wanted, and they also wanted. And later on in the story, well, actually, before I even get to that, they were just like a huge, big family for the whole movie, and I thought it was an amazing dynamic. I loved it. I think it went well with their fairy tale, and it went well in this movie. And overall, I thought they were great, and they had a really heartfelt scene I'm going to talk about later. So, in the movie, Goldilocks, the bears and Goldilocks, they find their little cabin in the woods where they're uh, when they're looking for, or when they're on their way to get this last wish, and all the bears are like really happy, and they're like, what else could we wish for? I don't think we need anything else. We're already so happy. And then Goldilocks drops the bomb on them. She's like, I want an actual family. And this hit, man. This scene, it was crazy. Like, when I saw it, I was like, wow. Like, it's one of those heartfelt scenes you get in kid movies, but it just hit. And then you just see the reaction of the bears. The kid bear was thinking, like, he's really mad at Goldilocks. But then you just see Mama Bear, and she's like really sad. She's like, because she already feels so close to Goldilocks, she's like, we'll get you this wish. We love you. It was just it was a scene that hurt to watch, because you knew how much the bears loved her, and you could just see how she didn't want to be with them. And it hurts because of all the love you could tell the bears had for her, and her just kind of like disregarding that, just being like, I don't care, I still want another family. And then later on in the movie, when there's like a huge battle between all parties involved at the star that's going to grant the last wish, and the little bear, I'm just gonna call him Baby Bear. Baby Bear, like, he's about to like hit this edge thing that like kills you. It killed one of Jack's men, and then Papa Bear grabs him, but he's getting pulled by that like barrier, and then Mama Bear has to grab Papa Bear, and then you see that dynamic. And in this process, Goldilocks could get the wish she wanted. She had the time, she had what she needed to get the wish, but instead because they're all fighting for the wish at this point, and she had the little map that you needed to get the wish. And it's this struggle that for me makes this scene really heartwarming. She completely disregards the map and goes to save her family, and she kind of says how that's her family, she'd never leave them. And it's just really heartfelt. They all like start hugging each other, and at the end they help Puss in the final fight, and they go back to living their life. And I loved them. I loved everything. They might have actually been some of my favorite characters in this movie. I'm gonna put them all together. They might have been third, because there's two more characters that I really want to talk about. And if you're watching this and you've seen the movie, you might know what characters I'm gonna say are my top two. They might be tied with another one that I'll mention when I get to him. But yeah, they were amazing. They were great. That's all I can say about them. They were perfect. They fit with the movie. They didn't ruin Jack Horner. They didn't ruin Puss's involvement. They didn't ruin Death's involvement. They were perfect. Just like I feel like every other character in this movie was. The next character I will talk about from this movie is Kitty Softpaws, a character who was present in Puss in Boots 1, and however, she had a major role in the last movie, being paired with Puss, Humpty Dumpty, and then she obviously contributed a lot to the plot in that movie. However, in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, I don't want to say she had a minor role, because she was still very important to the story and to Puss's character development as a whole. But I didn't feel as if she was as influential to the overall story. she did have a lot of moments with Puss and Perrito, who's a character I'm going to talk about. And I don't know, I didn't feel like she was as huge in this movie as she was in the first Puss in Boots. She's still a good character, nonetheless. She was still a good character, nonetheless, who had her own issues in the story and also had to go through some character development with Puss in Boots. So it's a kind of back and forth of development between the two, but it wasn't at the level of Puss. I don't really have much to say about Kitty Softpaws, but she was a good character and just not as good as maybe the others I mentioned before. So, the next character I'm going to talk about, and for many maybe their favorite character of this movie, Perrito. An absolute goat. When I first saw him in the movie, it was in the depressed Puss scene, or the depressed Puss arc, where he's like in the house with all these other cats. And Perrito had one of the most heartwarming, touching stories, and I think in this story, he touched everyone except Jack Horner and Death. But he had his moments with Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Puss, and Kitty. So I thought he was very influential to everyone. He played a major role, and he's just a likable character in every way. And like I said, he gets introduced in that depressed Puss arc. And when they first introduced him, I thought he was going to be like an annoying ass character that I'm going to be tired of as the movie continues. I wasn't too excited for his presence, but he surprised me. So in the movie, he's like an unwanted dog. No one wants him. He's kind of just rejected from every home he's ever had. And he reveals part of his backstory to Puss and to Kitty as they're going to the star. And it's pretty depressing. So in the story, he says a lot of things that the other dogs he lived with, they would all like try to avoid him, run away from him. They played hide and seek. He'd be it, and he'd always be it because they were always trying to get away from him. And it's pretty depressing, but it gets worse from there. As he continues telling his story, he states in the last instance, the last time he ever saw his dog mates, or whatever you want to call them, we never see them in the story. They're only relevant to his backstory. So in his backstory, he states that he's put into a sock that he's tied into, and it has a rock inside. And then they throw him in a body of water. I forgot if he said river or lake. I don't want to misquote him, but he says they throw him in there, and he manages to be free of the sock, but he never finds them again. He manages to escape, and he wears the sock on him. And that's really sad in itself. But in this whole story, Perrito's like the happiest character, and he really influences the changes other characters have, like Goldilocks, for instance. This was one of the moments. They have Perrito hostage because they want to get the map from Puss to get to the star, and Perrito just interacts with the bears, and the bears aren't evil. They've never been evil. They just want to grant Goldilocks her wish, and he kind of like plays along with them. He's always a happy character. He's never angry at anything. His only mood is happy the entire story. And like I said earlier, Goldilocks wanted to leave the bears. She didn't want to be part of their family, and that was her intentions. Okay, but in the scene with Perrito, he's like interacting with all the bears. They all love him. They're like, man, he should be part of our crew, blah, blah. And this kind of like hits, or something he says hits Goldilocks. And Perrito's like, man, I wish I had a family like this. He's like, y'all are the best. I wish I had something like this. You have the best family ever. Things along the lines of that. And this makes Goldilocks feel bad because she's already going with intention that she wants to abandon her family, which is the three bears. And it impacts part of her story because that's kind of as the story continues. And like right after that, I believe, is the scene where they're in the cabin. But yeah, it impacts her story. And it's something that leads to her change of heart later in the story, which I already talked about. And another way Perrito has a huge impact is there's a scene where Puss in Boots, he sees death. He's staring at him, and every time he stares at him, his hair jumps up. He gets like in a super anxious, nervous, panic attack state, and this is one of the worst panic attacks he's had in the movie. When seeing death, he runs away, he hides behind a tree, and he's just breathing very rapidly under the tree. And then Perrito notices he's gone. He goes after to chase Puss. Puss, like I said, is breathing rapidly. He has his eyes closed. He's just in a panic attack state. And Perrito just goes up to him and he puts his head over Puss's stomach to comfort him, console him, and then Puss starts petting him. And this is one of the most heartwarming scenes in the movie because it's one of the first times you see how much Puss actually cares for Perrito. Because at the beginning of the story, or when he first met Perrito, he kind of thought he was annoying. He didn't really care about him. But in this scene, Perrito shows his support to them. And it's just he's a beautiful written character. He has an impact on almost everyone in the story. And he was, for me, one of the highlights of it. And for me, my number 2 character. I love Perrito. He's a great character all around. And you just connect with him emotionally because he's so happy despite everything that's happened to him, everything he's had. He doesn't even see it as something he has to overcome because he's just a joyous dog. He's a joyous dog the whole movie, and we all love Perrito. Now on to the next character. So this next character, I decided to put in this spot because I wanted to save the last spot for Puss, the main character of this story. His name is literally in the movie. And I wanted to give it to the other character who deserves this top spot. That character is Death. Straight up. And I'm quoting him in this. It sounds kind of cringy, I know, but it's Death. It's Death. He's just super serious, super scary the whole movie. Honestly, for me, the scariest DreamWorks villain there's ever been. We had the one in How to Train Your Dragon. We had Shen. We had all these people. But this guy takes the spot for the scariest villain of DreamWorks. He's scary as hell. Because every time he sees him, like I said, his hair jumps up. He's like in a super panicked state. He's a greatly written character. He shows up right after. Actually, no. He has his first dialogue with Puss in a like bar setting. Bar, because Puss is drinking milk. But he has his first dialogue scene when Puss, right after Puss leaves the doctor, he lives his first life. He's drinking his milk, and then Death comes next to him, and he's trying to take his last life. And that scene is is the scariest in DreamWorks history I've ever seen. It's crazy. That first encounter, that first entanglement with death has to be one of the most chilling scenes I've ever seen. I was like jumped up out of my seat. I'm just like, oh damn, it's death. He's a hard ass villain. If you look at TikTok, there's a bunch of hard ass edits of death. I would put them on here, but they might get banned. But yeah, he's just scary all the way around. And the reason why I said his first appearance, but the reason I didn't say his first appearance wasn't that bar scene was because after like people like looked through the movie and stuff, you can actually see him in one of the first scenes where Puss fights like this boss villain. It's kind of like a filler villain, the one that leads to him losing his 8th life, going into his 9th. You can see him in the scene. I'll probably put a picture of it on the screen right here. But you can see him in the back. He's just watching Puss fight this villain. And yeah, that's his first appearance. Took a bit of investigating from people who watched the movie, who loved this movie. But yeah, Death was an insanely chilling villain. His intentions kind of changed towards the end. Sorry. Wow. So the intentions kind of changed towards the end. So Puss is like scared of him the whole movie, and Death is kind of just trailing behind him, waiting for Puss anytime he's alone. And he has this whistle theme. It's scary as hell, and it's hard to describe Death. But yeah, he has this theme that plays. It's like a whistle every time Puss comes, and every time he encounters him, it's chilling. It's scary as hell, and throughout the movie, Death is kind of just chasing Puss around. You only see him in those instances, like I said, where Puss is alone and he's not really focused on anyone around him, and that's when Death hits. And he has a lot of good chilling dialogue, and in it he really states how Puss is like super selfish. He never took advantage of those those many lives he had, and for this reason Death is going after him. And it's true. Puss didn't really care about those lives. He didn't really do anything with them. He didn't really care for anyone, and that's why Death was coming for him. And it's kind of like this throughout the whole movie until the end, in his last fight with Puss in Boots, as they're at the star. Death surrounds Puss in like this red hellfire. It's crazy. And in this fight, Puss has already had his character development, which I'll talk about right now. He starts caring more about, Perrito, Kitty, and all of them. And he actually starts doing something with it. He actually starts caring for something in this last life. And his motivations just increase. In the first encounter with Death, he wasn't able to fight Death. Death was just hitting his sword away. Puss couldn't do anything versus him. He was just unfazed. In this fight, Puss actually puts up a fight, and he's able to push back Death. And he says he'd sacrifice, or I'll talk about it in the next, when I talk about Puss in Boots. But yeah, changes motivations, and Death is like, you're not that being that I saw before in those previous 8 lives. Do what you may with your life and live it well, or something along the lines of that. And because of this, Death leaves, he departs, and he goes his own way. But throughout the movie, he's chilling. He does what Death should be, and I think he interpreted it really well. I love Death as a character, beautiful character, and my number one of this movie. Right. So So for the last character of this movie, it's obviously come to this, and it's Puss, the character this sequel is about. I don't know why I stuttered so much on that, but a character this sequel is about, Puss. Like I said, we saw him in Shrek 2. Now he's all the way to his own movies. And in this movie, he had, like I said, he has his 8th life. He loses it. He goes around kind of like still disregarding, still not caring about his last life. And then that's when death comes in the bar scene. He gets scared shitless, and then he kind of goes into hiding. And that's kind of when he starts to change. He gets scared of death. He starts, I feel like for me, that's the first recognition that he should protect his last life. And that's kind of what he does. He goes into hiding. That's where he meets Perrito. And he goes with all these cats, with this cat lady who the doctor who treated him after he lost his 8th life recommended him. He goes into hiding. He meets Perrito. He buries his boots, sword, and he goes into like that depression state. Then the bears come. He gets his map, and his motivations really start to change when he finds out about this, because he wants to get all of his lives back. He wants to go back to living how he was. And when Kitty gets introduced, they go on the quest, try to get to the star that's going to grant them their wishes, and Puss's motivations begin to change as the story progresses. With Perrito and Kitty by his side, he's more compassionate towards them. He starts caring for them, and we see this complete at the end when him, Kitty, and Perrito are all side by side together watching like some fireworks. And it really changes. He really changes as a character. I think he had the most character development in the story. In his last fight with death, he says how he'll sacrifice anything for this last life because of this change that Perrito and Kitty have produced from him. And obviously not just them, but he produces it by himself, or he produces it on this change inspired by himself, Perrito, and Kitty. And it really shows how much he's progressed as a character, because before that he was just throwing away his lives, saving people, fighting boss battles, dude. Like, he was just kind of throwing away these lives. He didn't care for them. And there's a scene where it shows all of his other lives around him, himself and his other lives. And they all saw they all saw Puss as a badass cat who soloed everything. And when those other lives see Puss, the 9th last life Puss, they're like, "You've gotten soft. You've completely changed. You're not us anymore." And that's another scene that shows this change he's had. And then Puss sees these, and he's like, "Man, I really am changing." And Puss sees these, and he's like, "Man, I really am changing." And then death comes in. That's another scene with death. Puss runs, tries to get to the wish, and that's where he meets everybody else. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that impacted his character development in this story, and I thought it was great. It was great. His dynamic with Perrito and Kitty. An important plot point that I kind of missed is this happens in between the first Puss in Boots and this one. Kitty and Puss were supposed to get married. Puss leaves her at the altar, but he finds out later that she also left because she didn't want to get married to this Puss. And in the story, Kitty always seeks a companion she can trust, and she didn't get that from Puss until now, until he started to change because of Puss and Kitty and all the factors around him, including, of course, that it was his last life. And they all start to notice this, and that's why in the end they're all together. They kind of like disregard the wish because they don't believe they need it to be happy. And in the end, Puss doesn't do anything with the wish, neither does Kitty, and they don't care about it anymore. And I think it's a very good resolution to this story that shows the change in so many of these characters who were all great in this movie, and I loved it. Now, my review on this movie, I'd give it a high rating. For me, it's at the level of Shrek 1 and 2, which is a bold statement. Take it as you may. Watch the movie. It is at that level. It's a perfect sequel for the first Puss in Boots. And at the end, they show a little teaser as to what's coming. And it's that there's going to be a new Shrek, potentially, because they're going to far, far away. So it leaves a lot of things for the future for this series, and it's a great ending. I love the movie. I love the characters. I think this movie gets a solid 9.5 out of 10 for me. It's a perfect movie. I loved it. All of the characters' dynamics go well together, and it didn't feel like we were missing out on any of the characters in this story, because they all had their own impact and own plot points throughout the story, and I thought it was great. And hopefully subscribe, leave a like, do that sort of thing if you want to see more content from me, or like the content I made now and might want to see what I do in the future with other movies, games, anime, things like that. But yeah, this is something I wanted to talk about on my channel. Like I said, it's a movie I feel strongly about, and I hope you got something out of the video, and I hope you enjoyed. I love you all. Stay safe.